In this video, we will look at how to create scatter plots in your graphing calculator. Now, this example comes from page 35 in your book, and this is example 7. Okay, so before we put this in our calculator, usually when using our graphing calculator, we don't enter the years. The numbers are just too big and it's a little bit more difficult to graph. So what we do is align the data. And actually there's another reason for that. Eventually we'll be creating linear regression equations, and it's more manageable when you're using small numbers for your x input compared to the actual years. So your book talks about aligning the data, and aligning the data means that what we're doing is we're taking the numbers given and we're scaling them back. And you have to have a reference point. And for this one, we're going to use years after. So years after 1980. So you want to watch for this in the problem so that it will tell you what your starting point year is. And then I also have it written up here, the years after 80. So what you do then is for the first year, 1984, you just take 1984 minus 1980 and we get 4. So the years after 1980 is 4. Then we do the same thing with 1987. Subtract 1980 and we get 7. And then we are 10 years away from 1980, then 13, 16, 19, and then 22, 25, 27, and 28. So when we go to put this in our calculator, we're going to use this column and then our column of data, okay? And then we will no longer use that first column with the years. So before I go any further, I just want to remind you that these instructions are also in your textbook in Appendix A, which starts on page 618, and it also talks there about how to enter scatter plots. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and turn our plots on. So to plot your scatter plot, you need to have the scatter plot on. So it's second. Remember, second goes with, mine's blue, so it goes all these blue commands. And I want stat plot, so I do second and then hit the y equals. And then you'll see plot 1 off, off, off. Yours might say on. What we want is just for the first one to be on. Or you can turn them all on at once. And these keys here turn all 3 of these on, either off at the same time or on at the same time. And the difference between them is if you had data in multiple columns, you might want to use one plot over the other. For this course, we're just going to use the first one, so we can leave the other 2 off. So what we're going to do is hit 1. And then to activate anything here, you just hit enter on top of what we want, and we want on. So we toggled it back over here, and then we just do second quit. So now when we go to plot our points, you'll actually see the points on the graph. Now an important thing to remember is once you're done, you're going to go back into StatPlot and shut that off, and I will show you how to do that later. To enter your data, you're going to hit Stats, and then we're editing data, so you could calculate or run tasks. We're going to edit or input our data. So choose the first one. Now if you have data in here, you want to go ahead and clear it out. And to do that, you just click on the first number, arrow up, hit clear, and arrow down. And then to the right, we arrow up, clear, nothing happens, arrow down, and it clears up the cell. So it's a good habit to get in there so you can actually write over the numbers, but if you have more data typed in than you're going to type in, you'll end up with extra data, and you'll either have to delete it or you might accidentally forget it, which would be a problem. So we're going to type in this data here, this column here for L1. So it's 4, and then we can hit enter, and 7, enter, 10, enter, 13, enter, 16, enter, 19, enter, 22, and 25, 27, and 28. And after you put it all in, I would double check and make sure you got that in there correctly, because if you just have one typo, it will, for the graph, if it's a minor typo, it wouldn't be so bad, but if you're doing a calculation, it would make your answer incorrect. So now we want to put in the number of executions that correspond to each other, these numbers. So we have 21, 25, 23, 38, 45, 98, 71, 60, 42, 37. Okay, so again, once the data is in, you want to double check and make sure that there aren't any typos, and if there are, you just arrow on top of the number and then go ahead and replace it. So at this point, we're ready to graph. And what's nice is the calculator will set the window for you. So you just need to do zoom, and then if you scroll down to number 9, so you can either scroll down or you can just hit number 9, and you want to use zoom stat. So if we hit number 9, you will see that it plots your data points, and if you were to turn to page 35 in the book, you would match this graph at the bottom. So if you were having trouble with this working, you can try number 4, clear list. So if you weren't seeing L1, L2, you can go ahead and try doing number 4. And then you can also try number 5. They both will help reset your calculator under the stat key back to what it should look like, or what it looks like when you start with a calculator. If you have a calculator that someone else has used, they might have altered it for a different math class. So then what we want to do is go to so again, here's our stat plot. Now let's say we're going to graph this. You would want to go ahead and try setting your window to a scale that's manageable for you to go ahead and graph it. So if you looked at it here, we see that x min is starting at 1.6. Maybe we want to change it to 0, and then we go up to let's say 30. Yeah, I'm not sure why they picked 30.4. Okay, whoops, I want this to be my 30. And then usually, at least the graphs that I hand out in an NC class only have 10 tick marks, so we need it to fit within those 10 tick marks. So you know what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to try going by increments of 4, because 2 won't make it, and then change this to 32. And then for y, we'll start at 0. You can start at other values, but usually 0 is the best, and if you can't see enough, go ahead and change it. And then to keep it even, I'm going to try 100 and see what happens, and then a 10. So basically we want to fill in about 10 tick marks across, not usually any more than that. If you're drawing your own graph, then you can make a decision, but if the space is already given to you, you want to try to fit that space. And then we'll go ahead and hit graph and see what happens. So, and then I have a line in here. If you're seeing a line and come across, it means that there's stuff under your y equals. So just hit y equals and then look for the equations and clear them out. Okay, so then hit graph, and then we can see our data points. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tick marks, so that'll fit nicely. If your scale or the grid that you're given only goes up to 10, and then the same thing with this, and then you could go ahead and plot your data points. When you're all done, you need to remember to shut off your stat plot. So what you need to do is go second stat plot. So second stat plot, there we go. And then you can just hit number 4, which will change all of them to off. And the reason you want to do this is that if you have to go back to y equals and start graphing equations, if your stat plot is on, it will also try to plot your data points, and if the scales are different, you'll get an error message because they can't be plotted on the same screen. So if you have any questions, just let me know.